How to Read Literature Like a Professor, a study on the chapter More Than It's Gonna Hurt You Concerning Violence. You can find the chapter on pages 94, 103. Pages 94 through 103. Okay, the main thing that this chapter talks about, is if I'm gonna summarize it in like one overarching statement, is essentially that violence in literature means a lot more than you think it does. This essentially is to say that when something happens in a book, and someone gets hurt, someone dies, something happens that hurts the story, it's meant to shift around the plot and is important in the sense that it's happening for a reason, right? Obviously, all literature is written by somebody, so when it is written that someone dies, or someone gets shot, or a flood happens, or a tornado happens, or someone gets sick, it is for a reason. There are two types of violence in literature. We have character versus character, and we have character versus environment. Or, if you're going to be honest with yourself, character versus author. These two types of violence can be applied in the same way, all right? Both of them are the author making a decision for something to happen to the characters that will influence the story itself, the narrative, right? Within the first page of the book, this little highlighted thing, the first sentence of the third paragraph, it says, "Violence is one of the most personal and even intimate acts between human beings." The first thing I thought of when I read that, Kill Bill by SZA. In the song, SZA has a line where she said, "Murder is a crime of passion." Obviously, if I'm supposed to make this chapter more applicable to Gen Z readers, I'm gonna mention SZA, okay? Murder is a crime of passion. This, in its own right, says something about this chapter. Murder, or any violence, is a crime of passion, or a crime that means more than you think. I have two examples for you. One is an example of character-on-character violence, and the other is a character on environment, or character versus author. My first example is from Lord of the Rings. In Lord of the Rings, there's a scene within the first book, I believe, where Frodo is traveling with his friends, and they get attacked by a group of these like wraith things called Nazgul. Kind of like Dementors from Harry Potter. If you've never seen it, imagine that. Frodo, the main character of the book, gets stabbed in the leg. When he gets stabbed, the blade gets embedded into his thigh and will never come out. This act of character-on-character violence symbolizes how his experience of leaving the Shire and going to Mount Doom and destroying the ring will also never leave him. The blade is forever in his leg, just as the experience is forever in his heart. It happens in the first book, but it mirrors what happens in the last book when Frodo is forced to say goodbye to the Shire because the experience weighs too heavy on him. Do you see what I'm saying? This is an example of when a character attacks another character, but it means more applied to the whole story. My second example is, you could say it's character-on-character violence, but I'm gonna say it's character-on-environment. It's from the movie Bambi. Spoiler alert. In the movie Bambi, his mom gets shot and killed. His mom gets shot and killed. And this, I'm gonna say, character versus environment, as the characters being deer and the environment being a place where hunters exist. Character on environment, his mom dying, forces Bambi to be exposed to the reality of the real world. It forces him out and it forces him to see, oh shoot, I'm in a place, it's exposure. It goes from him being in the shelter of his childhood to him being out in the real world, in the wild, right? Let's recap what we've talked about. We talked about how violence means more in a book, and therefore you should pay attention to it when it happens. If somebody gets shot, stabbed, poisoned, killed, bitten, marked, sliced, whatever, it means something. Read into that. For an author to make the choice to kill off a character or hurt a character, that is obviously important, right? Obviously, it's important. Second thing that we talked about was how there's two different types of violence, character on character and character on environment. So when you're reading, I recommend you go back and read into this book. There is a part of this chapter where it talks about the historical systemic aspects of literary violence. And I think that's really cool, but I'm not gonna get into it. I just encourage you to go back and read it and pay attention to violence when you see it in a story. Bye guys.